Cleo looked ill and was holding her stomach. She closed the door behind Greg. "Have you seen the papers?" She gently sat down in the only chair in the dark, dismal room. It felt damp and there was no electricity.
"No, I haven't."
"I brought you a copy. Front page, look."
"I feel so ill, Greg. I can't go to the hospital. They'll know. They'll find out if I do. What shall I do, Greg? What shall I do?"
"Cleo, if you don't go, you'll die. See sense. What have you got to lose, eh?" Cleo laid back in the chair, clutched her tummy tightly and wouldn't let go. She rocked herself to sleep. It lasted for about half an hour. Greg just sat and watched her. He was worried and getting desperate. Here he was, with a friend of whom he was very fond, and who was desperately ill through her own stupidity, in need of urgent medical attention, but who preferred to hide herself away in a derelict room in the centre of Cartampton. "I've got to do something. I can't just stand back and see her in this state. If she dies, I'm liable to get the blame." With this thought, he stood up, gathered his belongings, left the basement, and headed for the bus station. Policemen, it must be said, need strong constitutions to cope with some of the traumas and unpleasantness that life throws at them, especially when dealing with characters like Fred Partridge. Fred, a red-faced, tubby little man, broken down as a person and as a farmer, was not one of the easiest people to get on with. His small holding up at Stoneacre was more like Steptoe's yard. Scrap metal and old machinery, pieces of wood and parts of old car engines were piled up in every conceivable place. His farming diversification was more diverse than the EC might imagine. His manners left a lot to be desired too. "What the hell do you want?" was his greeting to Sergeant Tidcombe. "Whatever 'tis I'm supposed to done, I haven't." Tidcombe closed the police car door, placed his flat cap on his head and approached Fred, bearing a cynical grin. "I reckon you must have a guilty conscience, Fred. You're out to get I for summat, ain't you?" The sergeant pulled out his pocketbook, ignoring Fred's last remark. "Look, Fred, we're looking for a young woman." "Well, her ain't yer." "Did I say she was? I'm just making inquiries, that's all. Who knows, you might have seen her in your travels. Over at Hampton Woods, for example." "What the jigger would I be doing over Hampton Woods?" Fred's face bore a guilty look. He continued with the job he was in the middle of doing when Tidcombe arrived, throwing logs onto his battered old truck, which strongly resembled Jed Clampet's, and smelled of the pigs he kept in the sties at the back of the small holding. "Got a good supply of logs again this year, I see, Fred." "I never got 'em from Hampton Woods, if that's what you be a-suggesting." Sergeant Tidcombe sighed with impatience. "Fred Partridge, you talk yourself into prison given a chance, wouldn't ye? Just listen to my description." He related Carrie Hick's description of the girl, but Fred just looked blank and shook his head. "I minds me own business, and so should thee." Realising that it was practically impossible to get a reasonable amount of help from Fred, Tidcombe placed his pocketbook back into his pocket and went back to his car. "Fred," he called as he opened the car door, "if you do happen to see anyone or remember anything, this young girl could be in danger. Look, just bear it in mind, will you?" Fred gestured with the first two fingers of his right hand and continued loading the logs onto his truck. "There must be easier jobs I can do," Tidcombe said to himself as he left Fred's yard. In the evenings, Carol Harris is a barmaid at the Boar's Head. She and landlord John Clark had both been at school together and were more or less the same age.
"Do you wish you'd ever had kids, John?"
"Oh, I don't know. They're fun when they're little, but a troll when they get older."
Don't I know it?
Carol stopped wiping the glass that was in her hand. John was stacking bottles of low-alcohol lager on the shelves behind her. She was staring into space.
"I've got a bit of a dilemma on my hands, John. I've never told Greg that he's not Alec's natural son. I think I may have left it too long. What do you think?"
John placed the last bottle on the shelf, closed the glass door and joined her. "Oh, Greg's a fine lad. He's grown up now, intelligent. Oh, I reckon he could take it. Carol returned to cleaning the glasses.
He's apparently got a girlfriend, according to Noel, who got it from his friend, Stinky Pickles.
Who?
Well, that's what I said.
Picking up a duster from underneath, John began to wipe the bar over. So, what does Alex say about it?
He doesn't know. Neither did I until Noel told me.
No, I mean about telling him the truth, of his genetic being, that is. Carol frowned.
Alec rarely says anything. I'm wondering if he actually wants him to know the truth.
Well, it must be very strange for Alec, you know. I mean, after all these years of treating him like his own, he must feel pretty odd at having to face up to Greg suddenly knowing differently. Carol smiled, then patted John on the hand.
This secret girlfriend of his worries me.
It's a good job he's got one. At least you know he's not gay. Carol laughed. Good old John, she thought. He always uses the kill or cure method. But why was her son keeping this girl quiet? John assured her that boys of that age do all kinds of strange things and seem to get kicks out of keeping secrets. He then went down the bar to serve a grey-haired bearded gentleman who ordered a large scotch. Friday afternoon was beautiful. Betty Barrett was out in the garden at Swan River Cottage, down on her knees with a trowel. She'd decided to do some weeding and planted some dahlias. Bill was inside, sat in his favourite chair, having an after-lunch 40 winks. Being so preoccupied, she didn't even hear the garden gate latch click and someone approach from behind. "Hello, Gran." Betty gave a start.
Oh, our Greg, you made me jump.
"Sorry. Is Grandpa around anywhere?" Betty raised herself up from the grass and took off her gardening gloves.
He's having his after-dinner constitutional. What do you want to see him about?
Greg looked awkward. Well, actually, I don't. In fact, I'd rather he didn't know. Betty screwed up her face, anticipating that Greg was in some kind of bother. "I need some advice, Gran. I don't know what on earth to do. A friend of mine's in some trouble and she won't do anything to help herself. I expect I'll get into trouble over it as well." His grandmother began to look worried. She pointed to him with the trowel.
Have you been up to something, Greg Harris? Eh?
No, not me, Gran, honest. You know that piece on the front of the newspaper about the abandoned baby? Well, Cleo's its mother. Betty was stunned.
How'd you know?
Because she's hiding in a damp, dark room in a house in Cartampton and she refuses to get medical help. Oh, she's really ill, Gran. Without any hesitation, Betty hurried towards the cottage and Greg followed her inside. She picked up the phone. "What are you doing?"
What you should have done in the first place, young man. I'm ringing Sergeant Tidcombe. Now tell me, Greg, whereabouts is this house? Eh?